Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
All right, Vikings Vent Line every weekend right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Declan Goff here to take you through another edition of off-season Vikings Vent Line, where I like to bring on Vikings guests to talk about the off-season, talk about the upcoming season, draft, plenty of topics to get to. We'll do a little schedule picking here, or at least maybe not schedule picking, but we'll at least look at the win totals that a couple Vikings fans in Zach and Phil. No, it's not Phil Mackey. Will be joining me shortly here on Vikings Vent Line. We do this show after every Vikings game during the regular season. And of course, during the offseason, I like to talk to as many Vikings fans as possible. Shoot me a note. It's VikingsVentLine@gmail.com. If you want to come in on a future episode of Vikings Vent Line, it's VikingsVentLine@gmail.com. Also, a shout out to our friends at Aquaside. Aquaside is a great product for you to help remove that nasty lake weed and algae. Go to aquaside.com. They'll help you actually diagnose what the heck's in that pond or lake, whatever you got going on there. Aquaside pellets will help you take care of that. That's aquaside.com to go ahead and learn more. And our friends, of course, at the Meadows at Mystic Lake. You can go to golfthemeadows.com if you want to secure a tee time. It's beautiful out. It's 90 degrees. That's what I like to golf in. Go to golfthemeadows.com to book that tee time. They got great carts. They have a great Meadows Bar and Grill and patio situation. You go check out Meadows Bar and Grill and golfthemeadows.com to book that tee time. All right, Vikings Vent Line rolling on here on Purple Daily like we do every single week. So let's get our guys in here. Let's get Zach. Let's get Phil in. Zach, Phil, last-minute guests, last-minute additions here. You guys are the Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs Minneapolis Miracle situation you got here. This is, I forget what the actual play call was. It was like Seventh Heaven or something. I know it was something corny. But
Buffalo, right? Seventh Heaven.
Yeah, you guys are the Minneapolis Miracle play. So shout out to you guys for making Vikings Vent Line happen here a little bit. Zach, you've been on Wild Vent Line. You've been on Write That Down. Now you're on Vikings Vent Line. I feel like, you're kind of getting you're joining the Founders Club, like on Saturday Night Live. You got the special jacket. You're kind of like been on all the fan-friendly shows. So welcome to Vikings Vent Line, dude. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, happy to be here. Talk some Vikings in this time of off season.
Absolutely. And Phil, have you been on Vent Line before?
No, like I said, man, I'm between jobs right now. So this is my chance to get in and contribute to the content a little bit.
Hey, a little fun employment. I mean, it's never fun, obviously, when you're looking for a job or maybe you get laid off from a job. But at the same time, fun employment, man. I've been on some fun employments. You got a lot of thoughts brewing there, so I know you probably got some thoughts on the Vikings schedule too and Vikings off season. So we'll get right down to it. All right, boys. So Vikings won 13 games last year. Now they get a first place schedule, so a lot tougher opponents to a degree. They have one less home game. They have more games on the road this year too. I think a lot of national outlets kind of peg the Vikings as regression will be coming to them, given the fact they lost to the Giants and they won a lot of close games and the point differential. Plenty of outside obstacles are working against the Vikings. However, I like to hear what Vikings fans want to have their win total at for this next season. So, Zach, I'm going to start with you, man. How many wins for the Vikings in 2023?
So I have them at 11-6. I think.
Okay.
I just don't see how they get that much worse. I think the offense is going to be better. I think they're going to be more consistent. I don't think there's going to be those times where they don't score for the first 3 quarters of the game and then turn it on in the fourth quarter. I think another year in the system will help out. I don't see the defense being any worse. So I don't really see it. I mean, I get it's a tougher schedule, but I think 11-6 is where I have them.
It's weird. It's kind of weird too, like how sometimes with the point differentials and people saying, they're fluke wins and whatnot, 11-6 might be technically obviously worse than 13-4, but there might be a perception of the team that looks a lot different, right? If the defense is fixed and to your point, the lulls in scoring aren't happening on offense where they're scoring on the opening drives and they go another quarter and a half without scoring a touchdown. I feel like there's other ways to still have maybe a quote unquote worse record, but have a perception that you're actually a better team than you were the previous year too.
Yeah, and I have them 5-1 in the division.
5-1. Okay.
Losing 1 to the Lions.
Are you not buying the Jordan Love hype in Green Bay? Are you wishing disdain, kind of like I am with Packer fans, that they just stink and they don't have a quarterback for a little bit?
My entire life, they've had a Hall of Fame quarterback. So yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's I just want them to experience that for hey, who's the hell is your quarterback going to be short term and long term? Welcome to like basically 20 plus years of my life. I'm 30 years old, but at the same time, it's mostly been uncertainty. Phil, how about you, man? What do you have the Vikings pegged at from a win side in 2023?
I kind of struggle with this question a little bit. I'm going with 10-7. I don't. One thing that I'm a little concerned with is I'm a little concerned that we think that Brian Flores is going to come in and just magically fix this defense. And this defense has lost a couple of key people. Obviously, Eric Hendricks. Zadarius was obviously a huge contributor for the first half of the season, obviously tailed off. I think we're going to score points. I think I was talking to somebody about this morning. It's going to be a lot like the Denny years where we scored a lot of points, but we gave up a lot of points too. So I don't necessarily see this team. I don't see this team making as big of a defensive leap as they did from like 2013 to 2014 when Zimmer came over, because I think Zimmer was working with a lot younger group of guys. But with that being said, I mean, this team is going to score a lot of points. The NFC is very weak. The same person I was talking with this morning, it's like there's Philly and San Francisco and honestly, who else? So yeah, we have to play a first place schedule, but even with Rodgers leaving for the AFC, I think there's going to be a decent amount of opportunity to pick up some good wins. I think, Zach, did you say one loss against Detroit? Yeah. I can see that happening too. But I'm like, 5-1 in the division, but is definitely something that I can see him happening. But I just get concerned that we think that the defense is going to suddenly, I'm not saying it's going to get worse, but I don't think Brian Flores is going to come in and just like magically fix it. I think that there's definitely still going to be some hiccups and some times where they get the ball back with, the opposing team gets the ball back with $1:40 on the clock. And
we only need like an 18th overall defense. That's all we need.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's great to have Justin Jefferson. I mean, it's obviously, we'll see. I think Madison's going to do fine because it doesn't sound like Cook's coming back. So team's definitely going to score points, but they're going to give up some points too.
Which players on, let's go to that defensive side of the ball here really quick. So Brian Flores is inheriting a defense that had a lot of rookies that did not play last year or couldn't stay on the field. Now, same thing. They get a new incoming class that are a fresh crop of rookies. Are there any players that you're excited to see Brian Flores work with, Zach? Like, is there rookies or even veterans that you want to see him kind of sink his teeth into and maybe get to a next level and see if these guys are legit NFL players?
I'm excited to see Harry blitzing. Yeah. That's what I'm most excited for. I know that he was probably so upset last year that he couldn't blitz just because that's what he's so good at. So I hope we see him blitz a lot.
Yeah, he just stopped blitzing last season for whatever reason. I guess I somewhat understand it if these cornerbacks were going to be raw and exposed, so they had to have a great veteran safety in the backfield there. But I mean, that dude can still lay the wood. He's certainly not as fast as he used to be. But you got to deploy that guy strategically. And something I believe Brian Flores also did in Miami, at least, was he sent a lot of safety blitzes out there. He sent a lot of quarterback blitzes. So he got creative, and not just, your edges or your linebackers. He got creative with cornerbacks and safeties, and he sent them after the QB a lot. And to your point, 18th, can the Vikings defense just be above passing? Can they be really good at getting after the quarterback? Can they be, sound in the red zone? There's a few areas, at least, I think, that are obtainable. To Phil's point, that it might not just blossom and become all of a sudden a really good defense overnight because there's a lot of unproven assets there. But I think having someone like Brian Flores is certainly going to help a lot. Phil, how about you? Do you have anyone on that defensive side of the ball you're excited to watch this year?
Definitely Harrison. I mean, I've got the Harrison Smith jersey on, so I've loved Harrison Smith since he came here 10, 11 years ago. But so that'll be fun. And Lewis Cine will be interesting too. Coming off injury, I think, Zach, to your point, if Harrison can do what he's done so well, which is blitz and be sort of disguise coverage like he's been so good at, I think that opens up a really good opportunity for Lewis Cine. I think we've seen safeties that have had to play next to Harrison Smith historically, like Anthony Harris, Anderson Sendejo. Oh my gosh, I forget the person that was before Sendejo. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but they've always been an above average safety with Harrison Smith. So I think if we can get a couple more good years out of Harrison Smith, I think that'll be really good for Lewis Cine as well too. So I'm excited to see what Flores can do with him and see if there can be some sort of some sort of magic worked there. And he's had a full season to recover and focus on his being in shape and obviously being healthy. And I think that's only going to help him, quite honestly.
Yeah, even like Anthony Harris, right? I mean, that might be the guy you potentially were thinking of, where he just becomes an all-pro because he's playing next to Harrison Smith.
Yeah,
he's getting a ton of
Anthony
interceptions.
Harris.
And like where did that guy come from? He comes from a 7th-round pick and all of a sudden turns into a second-team all-pro and a Pro Bowler basically overnight and has one magical season. Playing the next side alongside a guy like Harry is going to make life a lot easier. Transitioning, boys, I want to know, because we kind of we've been ranking Vikings players on Purple Daily the last week or so. I'm going to do a list for next week too, but I kind of want to know your 3 most underrated or maybe underappreciated Vikings. Because obviously, if I ask you who's your favorite Viking, you're probably going to say Harris. You're probably going to say Justin Jefferson for sure. But I'm curious if your guys' list may be different, if they intertwine. No biggie either. But Zach, who are 3 Vikings players that you find underrated for this season?
So I have Jalen Naylor, Harrison Phillips, and Cam Bynum. And
those are good ones. I love those ones.
The reason I put Jalen Naylor is because I think he just hasn't got the opportunity, but I think he has pretty good talent. And I'm not sure if he will get the opportunity now that we have Addison and KJ and all that, but I think he can be good if he gets the opportunity. And then I want to touch on Cam Bynum quick. I feel like a lot of people have said that he's not as, like, people rip on him sometimes, but he was a 4th-round pick. Like, I feel like he's done pretty good filling in that spot for a 4th-round pick over the last couple of seasons. So I feel like he goes underrated on the defense sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you have a similar vote there with we were talking about with Ant Harris. Like Cam Bynum steps in and is able to play really well because he's playing next to Harrison Smith, but also he's a pretty good football player too, right? I mean, I think people were a little upset that he got the nod over Lewis Seen in training camp last year, and you wanted to see your 1st-round pick make the initial impact. And I'm sure even it's probably gonna be a similar boat next season or this coming season where you have Lewis Seen and maybe Bynum are splitting snaps, or maybe there's personnel packages where one of them is coming in and out, or hell, maybe they're all in the field together, right?
I want to see Cam Bynum play slot is what I want to see. I think he can play slot.
Yeah, he came up as a cornerback too, didn't he? He was drafted as a cornerback, kind of converted into a safety. So he's like this Swiss Army knife that Brian Flores basically has in his back pocket. And Jalen Naylor, if KJ Osborne, either if one of these guys suffers an injury, or maybe Jalen Naylor starts outperforming someone like KJ, he might be someone that's a legit number 3 wide receiver, just like basically KJ Osborne has kind of turned into it too. So you saw at the end of last season, him turning into a pretty good player. At least I know it was in garbage time against the Bears, but still promising nonetheless. He has a good shot at making the roster, of course, and we'll certainly see if maybe he cracks the field a little bit more and becomes one of Kirk's favorite targets for 2023. Phil, how about you, man? Any other else on that list of the 3 underrated Vikings players that maybe Zach didn't mention?
Yeah, I wrote down the first one that came to mind was Christian Darrisaw. And the reason I say that is it's not a super fun position being left tackle, but he's still the number 2, according to Pro Football Focus, the number 2 rated left tackle in the league behind Trent Williams, who's, all world left tackle. Right. So I think, especially for Vikings fans, knowing how much we've suffered on the offensive line for so long, I wish that he got a little bit more attention, especially being a left tackle, because it's such an important position. And I feel like the last time we had a really solid left tackle was Matt Khalil's rookie year, and that was almost 10 years ago. So I feel like, and he's still on a rookie deal too. So when we talk about salary cap implications, like we don't have him on a $10-15 million a year deal. So he's one of them. I also think he's new, but I also think that we're forgetting about, I know I talked about how Brian Flores isn't going to work magic, but I'm also excited to see what he does with Marcus Davenport. I think that coming off of a season where he was injured, it'll be really fun to see how he is able to fit into the mix. And I think that's the biggest question mark on defense too, is our linebacking core. So I think that Marcus Davenport has a really good opportunity to step up and be a really key player there for us. And then the third one I wrote down was somebody I already mentioned before. I think we forget about Lewis Seen just because he came off of that horrific injury in London. And I think that we just forget that in addition to Cam Bynum, like Zach said, we have him in addition. So I think it'll be fun to see him. I think safety is historically one of those positions that's a little easier to adapt to from college to the NFL versus having to play strictly corner. So I'm excited to see, and especially because this isn't Lewis Seen is a Georgia kid, right? So starting Georgia defensive player. Like we've seen what Philadelphia is doing with Georgia players. I think that's going to be really fun to see. And I think that he's going to do really well. And I think we forget about him a little bit too much because, he had that horrific injury.
Yeah, Christian Darrisaw, the first guy on your list. It's left tackle. It's an incredibly important position. It doesn't have any statistics next to it, so people kind of sleep on it a little bit in today's fantasy football realm. But having the second best left tackle in the NFL, I don't think anyone realizes that around the league unless you're watching Vikings football every Sunday. And I feel like he also, he got off to such a slow start because he got in Zimmer's doghouse right away because he was still banged up and injured. And then he got in 2021 as a rookie year, and he looked fine, but, certainly not a world beater. And then last year took a step forward to the point where, he became legitimately one of the best left tackles in the entire NFL, and no one really seems to be talking about it. So he's going to he's going to be in line for a huge payday. And with him and O'Neal, you got two basically pillar tackles there. I'm a little worried about Brian O'Neal. Like an Achilles is with a big man like that. I don't think it's just like, it wasn't a full tear, so he'll be fine. It's like, man, there's one way to chop down a big tree, and it's taken out his Achilles basically. So a little worried about that one, but we'll see how he performs in training camp and whatnot. But those are all really good players. I think Lewis Seen's the one that has probably the most potential to grow because he probably has the opportunity on the depth chart, opportunity to play the most like those players. And to your point about Davenport, a lot of pressures, not a lot of sacks. Some people at times I think get just so obsessed with sack totals that, hey, he still does a lot of other good things, and he's a couple seasons removed from even having a lot of sacks. So he's basically like this Danielle Hunter insurance policy and/or the replacement for Zadarius Smith. So there's a lot of good upside there. And if those two, and Danielle Hunter and Marcus Davenport, kind of turn in the same tandem that Zadarius and Danielle were, at least in the first half of the season, well, you'll feel pretty good about that defense, at least getting after the quarterback. Fellas, one more question I have for you here, but by the way, it's presented by our friends at 3Jack here in the North Loop. If you're in the Twin Cities, go to 3jack.com. Great golf simulators. They got great burgers of the week. Go check them out. You can go to 3jack.com. One of the best patio spots in town. Go enjoy it before a Twins game if you want to. You can go to 3jack.com to book that simulator, and also to go check out those weekly specials on how to join simulator leagues too. So go to 3jack.com in the North Loop. Fellas, favorite Viking of all time. So I came in as a Vikings fan in 2000. That's like the first conscious season I really remember as a Vikings fan. Of course, it ends at 41 donuts, but Dante Culpepper for me is always like my favorite Viking. I know that's been like a hot debate on Twitter over the last week and a half. It's cooled off a little bit, but the Kirk and Dante comparisons, for whatever reason, get thrown out there every once in a while. But for me, it's Dante. I'm curious to hear your guys'. Zach, who is your favorite Viking of all time?
So I know this is a very boring answer, but I have to say Adrian Peterson, just because 2007, 2008 is right when I started paying attention the most, and like actually watching all the games with my dad and stuff, and just watching how explosive he was just very entertaining. And I also met him at the Dino Lifetime when I was like 10, and he almost broke my hand when he shook my hand.
Oh, nice. You got the classic comment there. You shook his hand and you felt like your hand was going to break.
Yeah. It's true. It is very true.
Yeah, no, that guy's got some huge mitts. I feel like the AP stuff, because it's controversial, because he had some off the field incidents for sure, but he was basically like the Randy Moss for a generation of Vikings fans like you that didn't get to see Randy Moss in their prime, or didn't get to see rookie Randy Moss. Like rookie Randy Moss and rookie Adrian Peterson, very similar. I know that Moss probably had more impact on changing how we look at the wide receiver position than what AP did. But I feel like AP was really, the last superstar can't miss running back. And he was doing things that, as the league was beginning to change and phase out, he was still able to carry the team on his back. I mean, for God's sakes, he ran for 2,000 yards coming off an ACL tear and was the entire Vikings offense that made the playoffs in 2012. So, I know it might be boring to some, but I think it's sometimes misunderstood how big of an impact he had on a whole generation of Vikings fans. Phil, how about you, man? Who's the favorite Viking of all time in your book?
Chris Carter. Even though I didn't get to watch Chris Carter play a ton, because I became a Vikings fan probably right around the same time you did, Declan. So right towards the end of Chris Carter's career. But the reason I say that is because I have a soft spot in my heart for people like who just like stick it out with their career. And granted, I know that he had the years in Miami at the end there, but he started with a different team too. But like Chris Carter is like historically known for being a Viking. And what I think is I think I have a soft spot in my heart for it because he grew up kind of in the shadow of Jerry Rice, and they were obviously winning championships with him. But also too, then he had to deal with Randy Moss coming into the league and having to not necessarily play in the shadow of that, but being part of that 1-2 punch. So, and I think from what I've read about Chris Carter and from what I've read about how he played and like how he was, like if there's one person you want on 3rd and 7 and you need an out route, you need somebody to catch the ball, it's not Randy Moss, it's Chris Carter. And I think that's just like a cool thing to have attached to you as a Hall of Famer and as a receiver. And that's who I would. And I also enjoyed his commentary when he got into commentary and stuff too. So I always enjoyed his takes and everything. So Chris Carter's probably my favorite Viking of all time.
He's the ultimate possession receiver, to your point. Like, he's not flashy like the Jerry Rices, like the Randy Mosses, etc. Not even Michael Irvin. Connection blip there, my bad, guys.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he still ended up being a very very productive player. And yeah, a lot of Vikings fans certainly know who he is. Though yeah, all good lists. Like those ones a lot. Before we wrap up here, Zach, do you have any last takes, any last shout outs you want to give here on Vikings Vent Line?
I don't think so. I'm just excited to see how well they do. It's an exciting season.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too, man. It's been a long time coming here. Phil, how about you, dude? Do you have any last takes or shout outs you want to give here on Vent Line?
Yeah. Real quick shout out to my old boss and / mentor, Pat O'Rourke, for talking Vikings this morning and prepping me for this last minute conversation. So shout out to him, and shout out to my family for putting up with me every Sunday between noon and 3 or 3 and 6, or if we're lucky, Monday nights between 7 and 10. So
Amen.
Yeah, no, that's who I would shout out.
Appreciate it, guys. Great show, great takes. Love the underrated list there. I mean, those were all different players. And if anyone wants to also come on a future edition of Vikings Vent Line, shoot me a note. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Would love to hear from as many Vikings fans as possible. Again, that's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Mackie and Judd also back later this weekend. Plus, we'll be back at full strength. We got plenty of mini camp stuff that will be coming up, or OTAs wrap up, then mini camp. So it never sleeps, even in the offseason of the NFL. We'll be right here with you on Purple Daily. Hit that subscribe button. We just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die.